Okay, right about now, Dr. Kambon is ready and we're going to him. Doctor, welcome to the studios.
Thank you very much.
I hope you're cool.
Yes, I'm doing quite well.
Which people always say that? Trust me when you've never said you don't trust them.
Atrofo.
Anyway, you heard it. Atrofo liars are those who always say trust me when you never say you don't trust them. Doc, this morning we are looking at code of conduct, moral code of conduct for the African, the ancient Africans, way before the arrival of the Caucasian or the white man or the European and his Bible. Did Africa actually even had a way of conducting our life about what is right, what is not, and all that? Did we have any? And if we had, what was that?
Yeah, by all means, it was called Maat. In Chi, we would call it Mra.
Mra.
Right. Okay. And the idea is that the law is based on these cardinal virtues: truth, justice, righteousness / propriety, harmony, balance, order, reciprocity. So all of these were the idea that as above, so below, that if things are orderly in the celestial sphere, this is, in the stars, then things should also be orderly on earth. And as a matter of fact, and this is something that maybe interests some of your listeners, that when they talk about the 10 Commandments, that those were plagiarized once again from the 42 Declarations of Innocence regarding Ma'at. And I can actually give you some of those if you are interested in knowing what those were.
Today we thank you for coming early. We have more time, so
absolutely
give us the details.
Yes, so the 42 declarations: I have not done iniquity, I have not robbed with violence, I have not stolen, I have done no murder, I have done no harm, I have not defrauded offerings, I have not diminished obligations, I have not plundered the Neteru, that's the divinities, I have not spoken lies, I have not uttered evil words, I have not caused pain, I have not committed fornication, I have not caused shedding of tears, I have not dealt deceitfully. I can continue. There are 42, but that can give you a sense, or I can go through all.
So that just opposite to the 10 Commandments.
Yeah, so the 10 Commandments are thou shalt not. That's how they are phrased. And basically the Eurasians, they took the only 10 that they thought that they could actually live with. These ones are 42. And the idea is that you have to say truthfully that you have not done any of those things. And this is the idea that in the afterlife, every person will be judged, and the heart will be weighed against the feather of Ma'at. So for your heart to be judged, it means that, even if you thought no one else was there, no one saw you, your heart was there, and your heart would be the one who remembers and would say that whether what you said was true or was not. So you have to be able to say, I have not done murder, I have not done this, I have not done that, I have not done this. All 42. You understand? So this is the idea of the responsibility is on you as the person to be able to say truthfully that you have not done those. And when you are truthful, then you will be pronounced justified, where they would say ma'acheru, which is one who is true of voice.
Okay, so what is the difference between I have not and thou shalt not?
Right.
What's the difference?
Right, so one is the idea of here you have a jealous, vengeful God who's telling you don't do this, don't do that, don't do this, as opposed to this one, which was the original one, not the plagiarized one of the 10 Commandments. This is one where the responsibility is on the individual to be truthful. You understand? Because this is one of the cardinal virtues of Ma'at is truth. So for this, you have to be able to say, I have not done this, I have not done that. And then once you are able to say this, then you will be pronounced Ma'acheru. Again, this is one who is true of voice, and then you can ascend to be Asar, which is like the original divinity, the embodiment of kingship itself, Asar. So that will be appended to your name after you're able to do all of these things. So it means that you're vindicated, you're justified, you have become an ancestor. And this is the idea of on becoming ancestors, that if you call someone Nana, the idea is that they have Subaimpa, good character, that they Yabobrapa.
Okay, so that even suggests that you don't have to die to become an ancestor.
No, this is what you would do once you have passed on. All of these things take on in the afterlife, that you are guided, by, Jehuti, you are guided there in order to have your heart weighed, you understand? Matter of fact, let me go even before Jehuti. So Jehuti is the one who was overseeing the measurement on the scales. But you have Anpu, that's what the Eurasians refer to as Anubis, who would, that's the jackal-headed divinity, who would guide you up to those scales, where you have, Jehuti, who's there, who is able to measure and make sure everything is done equally, so forth and so on. And the scales of Maat. So Maat herself is depicted as scales. So if you ever see in front of a court building or place like this, there's a woman who's holding these scales blindfolded. This is a direct theft of the concept of Maat, where she is herself
that's kind of a symbol of freedom in France.
Of justice. Yeah.
Okay. So one would go like, okay, the I have not is too kind of self-righteousness. What do you say to that? It's instead of the one that says don't steal, don't commit this and that. Instead of I have not, one would be like that one sounds too self-righteousness.
Well, the idea is that you're supposed to live your life righteously, and you can only say those things if you have lived your life righteously.
Okay.
If you yourself know that you have not been living righteously, then you already know that you cannot be judged to be true of voice by saying those things. The other one, if you look at the 10 Commandments, people break these all the time because they know as long as they accept this imaginary white man, they're okay. So, all right, I can't murder, but I accept this imaginary white man, so, I'm okay. So this is, where we actually see the morals of our country, going down, our nation, our race going down, because in the white plagiarized system, they say, all right, you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't do that, but that's superseded by, well, if you accept this white man, then you're okay. You understand? So now people know that they can murder, they can lie, they can steal, and every Ghanaian...
Forgiving.
Exactly. So every Ghanaian, they say, oh, well, if the people were taken to a shrine before they go be minister of this or parliamentarian, they would not be doing these because they know that the original system, the non-plagiarized, actually work. But this one, they know that they can lie, steal, so forth and so on. As long as they accept this imaginary white man, then they're okay. So that's the major difference, is that one, you have an actual functional system of order because you know within yourself. This is, in Tree, they will call it wotibwa.
Yeah.
So this is your conscience. Now, if you have a conscience that you can say nitibwa bunafo, which is to say that this person's consciousness has judged against them. You understand? And this is the idea that any time that you're doing something, you have this feeling inside yourself that, oh, what I'm doing isn't right. What I'm doing isn't right. So again, this is the exact same concept, that you yourself are your, God and your judge. Exactly.
Wow. Now let's look at you yourself. Let me ask you: Do you practice this Maat? Do you have to recite it every day or something?
No. Again, this is something that you use as a guide, but it's something that you would recite, in the afterlife. So the very first idea of judgment, you understand? So the other religions, they plagiarize that idea that in the afterlife there's a judgment, and they got that directly from African people. So if we look at this, we get the sense of the original idea. You get a sense of the original ideas were coming from African people. Now there are some things that you can say, all right, it's something that you can practice. Right now, a lot of them are very peculiar to the land of Kemet. So for example, one of the declarations is, I have not cursed the king. Well, in our society, we don't necessarily have, say, one king who, you could recite that for. Maybe the Asantes can say, I have not cursed the Asante Hene, or, so forth and so on. But, as Ghana, we wouldn't be able to say, the closest parallel would be, all right, I haven't cursed Akufo-Addo, Nana Akufo-Addo, or something like that. So, again, there are some things that you can say, are universal. I have not done murder, I have not done others. There are other things like, I have not plundered the cattle of the divinities of the Necharu. Well, where are the cattle of the divinities now? You understand? So the society has broken down from what it used to be. So even some of the things, they wouldn't be relevant now. In our day and time, we need, some updated, concepts of this. Like, I have not supported Eurasian industries. I have not purchased from a Eurasian when I should have been purchasing from an African person. I have not used white social media when I could have been using the African social media. So these are things that, you could say, all right, those are relevant for African people now. But again, some of them, you can say, all right, I have not plundered the cattle, or there are no cattle to the Netru, because that society has been overrun by Arabs right now. So people are no longer giving, these types of gifts to the shrines and things of that nature.
For some weeks now, we've been talking about plagiarism and all that. Why would they plagiarize the Maat, which is 42? One, we want to know why they plagiarized it, then why they couldn't use all of the 42, but trim it down to 10.
Yeah. Again, the 42, and then, just for the sake of time, I've given you a sense, just some examples.
But if we want to mention any to arrange the discussion.
Yeah, let's actually do that, because I'm here early. We have some time.
Today we have time. Yeah.
So let's continue going through them. I have not uttered evil words. I have not caused pain. I have not committed fornication. This is number 11. I have not caused shedding of tears. I have not dealt deceitfully. I have not transgressed. I have not acted guilefully. I have not laid waste the plowed land. And as I'm going through them, you can think about the ones that are, still very relevant and universal to this day. I have not been an eavesdropper. I have not set my lips in motion against any person. I have not been angry and wrathful except for a just cause. I have not defiled the wife of any man. I have not been a man of anger. I have not polluted myself. I have not caused terror. I have not burned with rage. I have not stopped my ears against the words of right and truth, Maat. I have not worked grief. I have not acted with insolence. I have not stirred up strife. I have not judged hastily. I have not sought for distinctions. I have not multiplied words exceedingly. I have done neither harm nor ill. I have not cursed the king. I have not fouled the water. I have not spoken scornfully. I have not cursed the Netru. Again, these are the divinities. I have not stolen. I have not defrauded the offerings of the Netru. Again, the divinities. I have not plundered the offerings of the blessed dead. I have not filched the food of the infant. I have not sinned against the Neter of my native town. I have not slaughtered with evil intent the cattle of the Neter. So again, all of these are the 42 declarations. Now, if you look at, the plagiarized ones, they apparently found doing 42 to be too difficult for them. So you had the Hyksos, who came in as invaders and were eventually driven out by Yamos, the ruler. And this is, actually a discussion that we've had recently. Is being a king, is being a ruler compatible with Maat? Now, for the people of ancient times, the ruler was the only one who could guarantee that there is order, that there is justice, that there is balance, that there is harmony. Anytime that the ruler didn't have the power to do that, let's say when the Hyksos come in and overrun the land of black people, that's where you have chaos. That's where you have disorder. There's a text called the Lamentations of Ipuwer. Some people refer to it as the Admonitions of Ipuwer, that talks about, these Eurasians have come in. Now the one who had land is landless. The one who had a house is houseless. Basically, everything is upside down. You understand? Because there's no black in power who can ensure that the people are not enslaved. There's no black in power, the king, the ruler, to ensure that the people are not stolen from and raped and murdered, so forth and so on. And this is exactly the situation that we're in right now. So I want to bring it up to, modern times. Now we have these Black Lives Matter movements. We're begging the police to stop shooting us and so forth and so on. But we're still in this situation of isfet, of chaos, where we don't have a black ruler who can ensure that we are not killed, who can ensure that we're not enslaved. There's a book called The New Jim Crow, right? And it's by Michelle Alexander. And in her book, she documents that there are more people in the prison industrial complex than there were enslaved in 1865.
Wow.
You understand? Now, the 13th Amendment, and there was also a documentary called 13th that came out, and I also wrote an article about this beforehand called Legacies of the Transatlantic Enslavement, right? Now, basically in all of these texts, what it deals with is that the 13th Amendment of the United States, it does not abolish enslavement. It said that enslavement shall not exist in these United States except as punishment of a crime. This means all that has to happen is a white man says that you committed a crime. Now, guess what? You are working for free.
Say that again. I've heard it. I've heard this thing again.
Right.
That when they were abolishing slavery, they said that slavery will not exist in the U.S. except as a punishment for anyone who is found in prison. Yeah.
So it says that slavery shall not exist in these United States except as punishment of a crime. So, and I actually want to quote it for you directly. So, neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as a punishment for a crime whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist within the United States or any place subject to their jurisdiction. So, if you are very clear that it doesn't abolish enslavement, it says that all we have to do is say that you committed a crime. That was not necessary for you to commit any crime. It's just that a white man says that you committed a crime. You understand? So they had, these laws such as the pig law, that if you stole a pig, then that's a felony. But you don't have to actually steal a pig. All that has to happen is a white man says that you did. You understand? And you're not legally allowed to testify.
If you steal a pig, it's a felony.
It's a felony. But again, it's not necessary for you to actually steal any pigs. It's only necessary that a white man.
Yeah, but I want to believe that if you actually steal a pig, it's a felony.
It's considered a felony, exactly.
Which is a minor crime in Ghana.
So these are things that they would say if you steal a fence rail, a wooden fence, right? Here you have a wooden fence. If you steal one of the posts or one of the railings from the fence, that you can also be in prison for that. If you spit on the ground, if you talk loudly around white women, you understand? If you argue in public. Now, again, these are things that are frivolous and ridiculous, but if you walk on railroad tracks, I'm not making any of these up. They call these, the black codes. You understand? That's what they would talk about with Jim Crow laws. So they would just look outside and say, okay, you are texting on your phone. Texting on your phone is a felony. And basically they would use this as a pretense that anytime it's time to pick cotton, for example, then they would just go to the black community and say, all right, you're a vagrant. You don't have any proof that you have a job. You're under arrest. You understand? And now you are put into swamps, waist deep in water. And they don't let you get out for the whole day. So this means that if you have to urinate, that's where you urinate. This means if you have to defecate, that's where you defecate. This means if you need to drink water, that's where you drink water, from the same place that you have to urinate and defecate. And they would have quotas where you have to dig 5 tons of coal. You understand? So this is how America was built. It wasn't built by any white men doing whatever. It was built during enslavement. The White House was built by enslaved Africans, and all these other places, all of their monuments were built by enslaved Africans. And then 2, that after enslavement, so-called, they still have black people who are working for free. And this is what happens to this day. So if you look at all the companies that are invested in the prison industrial complex, it's companies like Dell, there's companies like HP, which I see at HP right here. It's Boeing. All of these American companies, they have black people primarily working for free, you understand, in these privatized prisons. And they also have this school to prison pipeline where they had kids for dollars. So the judges, and some were actually arrested and arraigned because they would have the owner of one of these private prisons give money to the judge in order to send these children to these facilities where they would be working for free. So, okay, you stole a candy bar or something, toffee at Walmart. Now the judge will send you to prison for that. You cursed at the principal. The judge will send you to prison. Now you're working for free. You understand? And let's say that you did it, but now let's look at even more egregious. One, it's egregious that these are so frivolous things that someone's going to send you to prison for this. But now let's say even more egregious is where you don't do any of those things. Just a white man said that you did, because they know that they will get millions and millions in kickbacks once they send you to these prisons. You understand? And this is a place that, in Ghana, people who've never been there, they say, oh, in the U.S. they have rule of law. And I say, these are people who know absolutely nothing. You understand? Rule of law. About America.
Okay.
You understand? So because if you don't go there, if you don't do any research, then you just assume that, oh, it must be good, oh, the streets are paved with gold, oh, dollars fall from trees, oh, people drink champagne instead of water. You understand? This is the perceptive view of how it is. Oh, they have rule of law. That one, you have unjust laws such as the 13th Amendment, which is built in, and at the time they put that caveat in to make sure that they would be able to enslave black people. So they have what was called convict leasing, and you can look this up, convict leasing. And this is what I'm giving you. If they need to lay railroad tracks, they have what were called chain gangs and all of these types of things. Then they would just arrest black people and say, all right, you're wearing a striped shirt today, you're under arrest. And then literally it will become a death sentence, because there are quotes from some of these whites who were doing the system where they said this is better than enslavement, because during enslavement you had to pay, you had to pay for clothes for them, you had to give them shelter, even during the off season where they're not working, is winter, there's nothing to pick, but you still have to take care of them. They said this one you can literally work them to death and then go get another one. You understand? So you would get a death sentence, not even for actually stealing a rail from a fence, but just from a white man saying that you did. It's a death penalty for that. You understand? So this is what,
But in some cases when you have a good attorney, you can...
No. No. This is intentionally railroading black people to get them to work for free. And one that at this time you cannot bear witness against a white man. So this means that if you and 10 other black people can attest that no, you were in church at that time, whatever, none of them can go on the stand and defend themselves against this white man. None of them can be witnesses.
Those days.
That's in those days.
Okay.
But even in this day, the word of a white man is taken as much more important than the word of a black man. In those days, they said literally that the black man has no rights that a white man is bound to respect. And they were looking at people like Thomas Jefferson, those who said all men are created equal, but they had enslaved Africans right there on the plantation. So they said, obviously, when they said all men, they didn't mean you. So therefore, we don't have to respect any of your rights. That's de facto still what happens right now. You understand? So you have a white police officer who says, oh, I felt scared, that's why I shot him. They say, okay, well, you can go home, go see your family. You killed him, but it's okay. So even though they're not openly saying it, this is exactly what they're doing, where you would have a white man who kills a black man, he gets off. A black man who kills a white man, that's exactly. Or he didn't even kill a white man, the wife did it, but then just said, oh, there was a scary black man who did. Then they just go find anyone who doesn't fit the description. So she says, oh, he was a 6'3" black man with muscles. Then they go and get you and say, all right, we got one. Who cares? You understand? So this is exactly what's going on. So all of this is basically to go to the point of, at the time where we had people in power to prevent this from happening, it didn't happen. At that point in time, there was justice, there was order, there was balance, there was reciprocity, because you had someone in power who could ensure that. Right now, as we sit, we don't have anyone who's in power to do that. So all throughout the world, we're suffering.
I was saying before you came about Mugabe's brouhaha with the WHO, and I was like, for me, I think the only president alive in Africa is only one, and that's Mugabe. Because he's the only one who is hated. The rest of them are loved by the West.
Well, you also have Eritrea, who has kicked out the NGOs. They kicked out, they said they don't want any aid. They said aid means enslavement. So now in Eritrea, they're also being vilified for the exact same reasons. So basically, the pattern is the same, that anytime you have someone who stands up against their white Eurasian enemies, then they are vilified. And you have Mugabe is the main one that we know of, because he tends to stay in the news. But you have others who try to challenge this in one way or the other, and usually they're vilified. They try to destroy those people's economy so that their people will come up and do some type of uprising. Then they can say, oh look, the people did it themselves. But all of that is manipulated. They're intentionally destroying those countries and those economies in order to get those people who don't understand the internal and external dynamics. They just understand, okay, I don't have money, let's go and get the president. You understand? So these are how things are manipulated from the inside and outside. If you only understand the inside, you don't understand. If you only understand the outside, you don't understand. You have to understand the relationships between those. So this is where I want to come to, is just this idea of we have to have some authority figure Whether in ancient times it was a king, whether in modern times it's a president, whatever it is, you have to have someone in power in order to make sure that Ma'at is done for black people. Otherwise, black people will be subjected to Isfet, which is chaos, which is disorder. And every single time that the hierarchy broke down in ancient times, that's what you had. You had the first intermediate period. So you had Pepi II, who got so old that his successors ended up dying before he did. You understand? So the successor is in his 70s. The successor is in, so he dies. So what you have is you had a system where already there were powers that were delegated to other, people in the empire. And what they did is that they took the opportunity of the succession dispute to now say, well, now I'm the king. Then you have those other ones who said, no, now I'm the king. So you have a breakdown in the hierarchy. And what happens is this is the first intermediate period where you have infighting black people against black people. You understand? So Kemet means land of black people, but at that time in the first intermediate period, you had brothers killing each other. You understand? Eventually, you had Menchu Hotep, who was able to unite the kingdom again. And once you have that hierarchy in place, you have a ruler who's able to establish Ma'at. That's where all of that stops. You understand? You have one hierarchy, one central power, and now you don't have this infighting. You don't have people killing each other because the ruler is there to ensure Ma'at. That's the role of the king in the view of the ancient people of Kemet. Now you have another intermediate period, which is when the Hyksos, these white Eurasians, come in. That means you have a breakdown in hierarchy, a breakdown in the authority. So then they're raping, they're murdering, they're killing, they're bringing ruin. And in all of the texts that our ancestors wrote, like you can read it right now on the Tekken, that's the obelisk of Hatshepsut, where she talks about she raised up what was ruined by the Hyksos for the first time since they came in. You have the Stela of Kamos, who talks about the ruin that these Amu, right, that's the Eurasians, these white Eurasians, did when they came in and invaded Kemet, their mistress. So you have text after text that talks about anytime we don't have a strong ruler to protect us black people, that this is what happens. You had the invasions of the Persians, of the Assyrians, of the Greeks, of the Romans, of the Arabs. Anytime, and that all of those caused us to migrate down to where we are now, in so-called sub-Saharan Africa, or what we should say from the Kemetic worldview, migrate up to where we are now. Because remember, south is up in our concept. So in that migration, now you have basically the same thing that happened at the first intermediate period. We have all of these fragments. So you have, this Thugwe here, you have that Hene here, you have this, you have that. Basically, now you don't have one authority that says, look, we're all black people and I'm the authority of all black people. That where we're in right now is the exact replica of the first intermediate period. We have these black people fighting against those black people because we don't understand that we are all one black people and we have a common white Eurasian enemy. You understand? So, again, this is basically coming to the idea, and it's right from the very beginning, this idea of Osar. That's what the Greeks called Osiris, that he was considered to be the king who came right after Geb, and Geb is the earth itself. So right after that you have Osar, who ascends to be the king. After him you have Heru, who ascends to be the king. And you have an unbroken lineage of kings who ensure that black people are not enslaved. You understand? So kingship means that your people are not being enslaved. And you actually have historical cases where, again, you have the Hyksos who came in, and Yamos was the one who was able to expel these Hyksos and restore order. You have the Sea people during the time of Meron Ptah. So the Sea people were coming in, and Meron Ptah's responsibility as king was to make sure that they don't invade Kemet and enslave the people, and kill the people, and rape the people, and murder, and steal, and so forth and so on. So again, from the African conception, the ancient conception of African people, the role of the ruler is to make sure that these white Eurasians don't come in. You have at the time of Amenemhat in the prophecy of Neferti, it says that Ameni will come in and build the walls of the ruler to crush these sandfaring, Eurasians, these Bedouin sandfarers. So again, they're building walls basically in order to make sure that their people are not enslaved, are not murdered. But as soon as you have the breakdown of Kemet, then you have this flow, into Africa of all these pale white Eurasians, the Gaddafi types, these folks, these Bedouin, Berber, white Berber types that you find in North Africa to this day. So again, this is what we're dealing with.
Okay. So two things running through my mind right now. Would we say that anytime my heart breaks down and there's no leadership, then would you say that corruption also play a role in there?
Yeah.
And the second question would be, what do you think should be the right age for somebody to assume leadership? Because somewhere you said that somebody ruled for too long, and even all his successors died before he died.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes you think of Mugabe, yeah?
Not just Mugabe. I'm talking about a time where, because in Ghana you have to be 40 before you can become president, which some of us think is bad.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So let's start from corruption. That leads to lawlessness. Then that opened the front gate for the invaders. Then we look at the right time for leadership.
Right. There's a 4,000-year-old story that's been translated by a group called Shimsubak, of which I'm a part now. The translation was done before I joined the group, but this is one of the things that, one of the texts that we use in our household, just read it to my daughter. We've gone to the Chi version. So it's translated into Chi, into Bambara, into Hausa, into French, into English, into Kikongo, into Kiswahili, all of these various African languages, Zulu, so forth and so on. Now, during the first intermediate period, you had, these rulers here, who say, all right, I'm the overall king. Then you have others who say, no, I'm the overall. And you have those who say, oh, no, I'm the overall. But even in these smaller fragments, at that point in time, the story is about corruption, right? So there's a man called Renzi, who is an overseer of this region. And there's Seketipen, who is the peasant. He's often referred to by the Eurasians as the eloquent peasant because he knows so much about Maat. And they just keep him talking and record what he says just so they can get him to keep talking about Maat. What is Maat and what it's all about. Now, what happens is that he decides to, come into Kemet. He's in the hinterland. He decides to come into Kemet in order to, sell his goods and get new wares and other things for his household. Now, as he's doing this, Renzi, who is the son of Meru, he decides to play a trick in order to steal all this guy's stuff. So he sees that, all right, he has these donkeys and that there's a very thin part of the road where on one side you have the water, and then on this side, this is where you have his field of, I think it's emmer, wheat, or barley. So anyway, he lays down a cloth, right there on the road. And as Seketipen is coming, he says, don't trample on my cloth. If you do, you've broken the law and so forth and so on, because he's the overseer. You understand? And at that point in time, there isn't the overall ruler of Kemet. You have these warring factions or whatever. So he's like, I can get away with this. So, now Seketipen has to decide between a rock and a hard place or water in the field. So he decides on the field because everything will be destroyed if he goes into the water, all his things that he planned on trading or whatever. So he goes into there. And what happens is just as Renzi expected, one of the donkeys takes a mouthful of the grain. Then he says, aha, your donkey has stolen my grain, therefore I will repossess all of your, I have to steal all your donkeys as payment. He says, no, I can pay you for 10 times what that little bit of mouthful of grain was worth. He says, no. And then he beats the guy up. This is so corrupt. This is so unjust. So now Seketipen decides, all right, now I need to go to the boss of Renzi. So he does just that. And he expects Maat to be done. So even in the intermediate period, he's still going expecting for Maat to be done. So he goes there, and the one who Renzi reports to, he says, you know what, I have to go to our overall ruler, who has proclaimed himself as so-called pharaoh. This is where you have the 9th, 10th, 11th dynasties. Those are usually lumped all together. But again, he's saying, all right, now I need to go to the overall person, because after the very first time that Seketipen, the peasant, protests, he is so eloquent, and he talks about Maat. He talks about justice. He talks about righteousness. He's like, wow, this guy is brilliant. So he could have right then at that point in time said, you know what, let's do justice right now. But he says, you know what, if we let him do it, he'll stop talking. And we need him to keep talking about this so that all future generations know what Maat is and know what Maat isn't. So let's keep him talking for as long as possible. So he sends word to the overall ruler, the Nesu there, for him to come and have them transcribe everything that he says about Maat and about justice. And some of the quotes are, I'll read the tree papayoma ahunto, which is, goodness brings about,
Comfort.
let's say
Freedom.
comfort, freedom. Let's look at those types of terms. So again, it says, no friend for the one who is deaf to truth, where he's actually talking about Maat. He uses the word Maat. And it says, onipa bia ontie nokore na oni na adamfo. So if you don't listen to truth, you don't have any type of friend. He gives other things like doing right on earth means doing justice, Maat, right? So again, he's talking about Maat. And even during the intermediate period, at the time we have these warring factions, you still have people who think that the ruler, his role, so he's talking directly to the ruler.
He's talking to his conscience.
Right. Yeah, he's trying to get into the conscience of the ruler and say, you're a great person. And he says that. He says, tell no falsehood. You are a great one. You understand? You are in a position of authority. How can you... So he actually goes back on and say 9 times, 9 different petitions. Because in his mind, he's like, how can you do this? You haven't settled it. But he doesn't know that really they're just using this. They're eventually going to do justice, which is what their role is for. But they just want to keep him talking about what Ma'at is. And, he also says, do right for the Lord of Ma'at, whose justice is truly beautiful. So again, this is all of these ideas of what is Ma'at. What is Ma'at? It's for you, the ruler, to do justice. It's for you, the ruler, to do righteousness. Why are you here for? That's your whole role in life. If you're not going to do Ma'at, then what are you here for? And again, he's so intent on you doing what's right that he goes there 9 times. Eventually, they do Ma'at, and they take all of the possessions of Renzi, the son of...
Can this be just opposed to the Bible story where a woman was looking for justice and will always go to this king, and this king say he doesn't respect human being? But according to the story is talking about persistency. The woman...
Perseverance.
Come again.
Perseverance.
Perseverance. The woman kept on worrying, and he said, no, I'm not giving you justice because I respect human beings or I respect the Lord, but because you are worrying me, I don't want to see you here again. So I declare justice.
That sounds like a very perverted version of this story. Plagiarized and perverted, just as most things that you have are stolen from Kemet. So at the end of this story, the way that they do justice is that they take the title and position of Renzi, the one who was the overseer who had done the wrong in the first place, and they give it to the peasant. Right? They give the office, they give all the lands, all the possessions, everything that he had, and now Renzi, who did wrong, becomes a peasant, and now the peasant ascends to that title and that position. So this is how Ma'at was done. So again, the idea is that the ruler does Ma'at. That is the whole point of the ruler, is to do Ma'at.
Okay, so the second question about the age. What do you think, personally, in your own view, what do you think should be the right age at which somebody should assume leadership? And for me, what we are looking for is, it looks like when people are in their youthful age, they are able to accomplish quite a lot than when they assume the leadership at that older age. Vis-a-vis the ancient Africans, what were the ages at which people assume leadership, and why?
Well, in ancient times, you had even children who could be declared the ruler, the king. Now, if they were like 1 or 2 or 3 years old, then they would have a regent. So that's what happened to Jehuti-Mes. He was young, and Hatshepsut started off as a regent, but then she declared herself the overall ruler of Kemet. You understand? Other times you had Tutankhamun, who was also young. They referred to him as the boy king. So, in that system, the whole point is for the rightful heir to be chosen, the son of the ruler. So this is what Asar made sure happened in the case of his son Heru, because you had Seth, who was trying to usurp the throne. So instead of letting him do this, Asar wrote a letter and said, if you are trying to prevent my heir from being the ruler, then you're driving Ma'at underground. So for Asar, righteousness was making sure the right heir comes to the throne. Now, the age of that, young ruler, if it's a child, then they would have a regent, and oftentimes it would be the female, of the family whether it's the aunt or the mother or something who would be the regent. Then there would be co-regent.
What's the role of the regent?
So the regent is to do everything that the king would do until the child comes of age. Exactly. So if you're 3 years old, you can't do very much at that point in time. So they have, someone who is the regent. And then also when the ruler gets older, so this is a case of Queen T, right? So Queen T at the time of Amenhotep the third. So once he got older, you would have rulers from other nations who would actually address letters to Queen T because they knew that she was really the one who's running things at this point in time. And then you also had women who ruled outright as well. So again, there wasn't a lower limit to make sure, all right, you can't be until you're 40 or so forth and so on. But then also there wasn't an upper limit. And this was a challenge because when there wasn't an upper limit, like we saw in the case of Pepi II, then you could have a case where the descendants end up dying off. And then this led to a breakdown in the social order. So we saw this actually a couple of times in Kemet where you have the ruler who gets so old that the descendants die off. Then it becomes a succession dispute, and then you have a breakdown in Maat, a breakdown in the hierarchy.
Oh, okay. So it means that there wasn't an age limit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right.
But a part of my question is about delivery and performance.
Right.
Which one will you choose? Somebody who assumed leadership at the age of maybe 40, 50, and somebody who assumed leadership around 28, 30. Which one will you go for?
Well, we can look at different things. We can look at, and I think it really depends on the context, and that's one of the main ideas of Ma'at is propriety, doing the appropriate thing at the appropriate time.
Okay.
So we can look at Ramisu Usa Ma'at Rasa Tepen Ra, the short, they just say Ramesses II, that, in his youth he led several military campaigns, into southwestern Eurasia, defending the land of the black people, and that was actually one of his names, Mek Kemet Wab Chesut, which is the protector of Kemet who curbs the foreign lands. So again, the protector of Kemet. Kemet means land of black people. He's there to protect the black people, and that's even part of his name, which I think is so profound. So, you had him able to lead and win military campaigns. Also, he is the author of the very first peace treaty in the history of the world, a copy of which is in the UN. So when they talk about peace, they make us think about Gandhi, who supported every war in his lifetime. However, right there in the UN, so this isn't secret information. Anybody could tell you, yes, your black ancestors invented the peace treaty. However, I don't think that's part of any of our curricula.
I've never heard it until today.
You've never heard of it. But you can actually go to the UN and see that peace treaty right now to this day.
Written by.
So, Ramesu, Usa Ma'at Rasa Tepen Ra.
They have the name there.
Yeah, exactly.
They've not changed it.
No, it's still there. So, this is what we're getting at. So this is the role of the ruler. So he was able to do those types of things. You also had Jehuti Mes. So after he succeeded Hatshepsut, who was originally the regent, but then, he was able to take over, that he did several things because he considered that what she did was usurping the throne from him, because instead of just being a regent and then when he comes of age, letting him rule, she kept sending him off on military campaigns and other things to keep him away, so forth and so on. Now, that was beneficial to him militarily because he ended up being one of the greatest military rulers of Kemet, where this is after the Hyksos were driven out, that he was actually able to take the war into southwestern Eurasia and, take the war to these Eurasians. However, he also did something that I think was not wise. So all throughout the history of Kemet, they had a policy of keeping the Eurasians out of Kemet, build walls, keep them out. You have all these texts like the Admonition of Ipuwer that talks about what happens when they come in, Prophecy of Nefertiti that happens when they come in. All of these texts, I can list multiple ones. Now, what he did is that he did a policy that we usually do among black people, which is you try to bring in the princes and princesses, let them come to your court, so that when they come of age, you've indoctrinated them to the point that now they'll rule on your behalf, they'll do things in your benefit. You even see this up to the time of the Asante Empire. So Ase Tutu went to Dinshira, you understand? and this was along the same idea. So he was to serve at Denchira court, so that when he goes back, that he will now serve, Denchira and so forth and so on. Now, the reason why this backfired is at the end of the day, the Eurasians understood that they're still pale white Eurasians. So this now opened the door for these princes and princesses who married, and so forth and so on. It opened the door for them, and that now became the foothold that the Eurasians used to destroy Kemet. So people usually look at that as the fulcrum, the crux where things changed. That reversal of the original policy of Kemet, which was to bring in black people, bring in the lands of black people, but keep these Eurasians out at all costs because they are our enemies. You understand? So I think that perhaps if his situation was different, if the throne wasn't usurped from him, and then vindictive or whatever, if he perhaps was older, he would have been able to study, why did all of my predecessors say keep these Eurasians out? You understand? Maybe if he was a little bit older. So again, that's why I'm saying I understand the point. He
was younger.
Yeah, he was younger at this point in time. Okay. So this is a point that, with age, we would expect wisdom, to come. And this is why I'm saying I wouldn't just blanketly say young people are good, old people are bad, or old people are good, young people are bad. We have to look at
what is made up of this.
That's what Maat is about. Propriety, looking at the context, what's going on. This is what we still talk about. That only at the appropriate time do you cite a proverb. So this is what I can give you. We can see, in the case of Pepi II, a case where someone became too old, and then it led to a breakdown in the social order. We can see in the case of Jehuti Mes, who they call Tutmos III, that perhaps he was too young. If he would have been able to study, every text. All of them are saying keep these Eurasians out, but he reversed that policy. And interestingly enough, this is actually the same time that you have this influx of Eurasians, such as the Khoisan people. Around 3,000 years ago is when they had a reverse migration back into Africa. These are the people who speak with cliques, right?
Yeah.
So in southwestern
now they're in South Africa.
So yeah, they're in southwestern Africa. So Namibia, South Africa, all these places, you can still find them. So, genetic evidence has shown that it was around 3,000 years that they had this reverse migration into Africa. They took a path, and there are still clusters of them in Eastern Africa. So they took a path through Ethiopia where they still have these all these types of ejectives. And you can see the influence on the languages of the black people any place that they pass. So you see also as a Bantu language, a language of the black people, but they have cliques because they're close to these Khoisan people. You have isiZulu, which is a Bantu language, but they have cliques because they're close to these people. Whereas you have other Bantu languages that don't have cliques, you understand, because they're not close to those people. But again, you can see this reverse migration. So first off, humanity started here in Africa, where you have RD, and you can look up RD, this is 4.4 million years ago. After that, you have Dinknesh, who we've referred to before, who they call Lucy, that's around 3.2 million years ago. And I've actually seen the skeleton of that one. And then we can come all the way up to modern Homo sapiens sapiens. The oldest fossils are now 300,000 years that have been found. Those were found in Morocco. We talked about the Green Sahara. And then younger than that, 195,000. So now we're talking about modern Homo sapiens sapiens, people who look just like you and I in the hundreds of thousands of years. So around 60 to 80,000 you had a migration out of Africa, and this is where you have those people who migrated out eventually became these people who we know as Eurasians, and they were kept out as much as possible until this policy reversal, you understand, of Jehuti Mes. The policy was always keep them out of Kemet, keep them out of Kemet, keep them out of Kemet, Kemet meaning the land of black people. But then Jehuti Mes made that decision, allowing the Khoisan to come in, allowing all these other Eurasians to come in, and really setting the stage for the destruction of Kemet, the destruction of black civilization. There's a good book by that title, The Destruction of Black Civilization by Chancellor Williams. So if you want to understand what happened to make all of these civilizations fall, it was always the same. As soon as you let these Eurasians come in, then your nation will fall. You understand?
So it is not something new.
It's not something new.
That has been the case. Okay, so if I understand you, it means that the age actually is not the issue. It's about what the person's thinking faculty is made up of.
Yeah, it's about what wisdom do they have. You understand? Can they make good decisions? You understand? So if you are, perhaps in your 50s or 60s, and you're making decisions that are beneficial to black
It's
people,
like Mugabe is doing at the age of 90.
exactly, over 90 now.
Over 90, yeah.
So if you are making decisions that are beneficial to black people, then you should rule. If you are making decisions that go against black people, then you should not rule. And you actually had in Kemet, you had cases of assassinations, harem assassination. Now some of them were just because the woman wanted her son, like Pentower against Ramesses III, Mary Amun, who wanted her son to rule. So that was very selfish. But other times, they would seeing that this person is senile, this person is old, they're not running the land of the black people as should be. So then they would actually do assassinations. So, you had Amenemhat the first who was assassinated, and this is where the story of Sanhat is coming in. So, again, I think that what we need to do is really follow Ma'at, follow truth. But the reason why this has come up is recently we had, I don't know if we can call it a debate, but something like a debate among the same group where we're doing.
What's that?
Yeah, I'm going to let you know. Okay. So we were having this debate among the people who are doing these translations. Right, I said I'm part of this group where we translate into all these African languages. And the debate, the substance of it was, is Ma'at compatible with kingship? So on the one side you have, someone who's saying, well, Ma'at just means being egalitarian. That means we're all on the same level. Therefore, kingship intrinsically means that somebody is higher than other people, so therefore it's not compatible with Ma'at. Now this would be completely foreign to the people who invented the term Ma'at, because for them the role of the king is to make sure that justice is done. The role of the king is to make sure the order is done. The role of the king is to make sure these Eurasians are kept out, and so that the people aren't enslaved and so forth and so on. So on the one view, Ma'at means egalitarianism. However, there's absolutely no text that says anything remotely similar to that. There's no text where people like Sekhetti Pen is making all these 9 different petitions, but never does he say, we're supposed to be on the same level. He's saying, no, you're at a higher level, therefore you have responsibility. So it's less about, I have the right to do whatever. It's not the white concept of kingship, off with his head and blah, blah, blah. It's the African concept. He's like, you have a responsibility to do Ma'at, and he says this time and time and time again. Every time he mentions Ma'at, he says, you're supposed to be doing Ma'at. What's going on? You're supposed to be doing Ma'at. So basically the idea is that, on the other side you have these people who say, all right, Ma'at just means being egalitarian and so forth and so on. And they actually use Asar and Aset as the models of egalitarianism. They say, Asar was egalitarian, Aset is egalitarian. But the problem is that that's a fictional account. That's never what any text says. No myth says that. The whole thing is that you have Asar as the king, Aset as the queen, and both of them want the rightful ruler, which is their child, to be the next king. You understand? So there's no part of that myth. There's no part of the story.
Even for me, what is wrong with our leaders believing in egalitarianism? Because if we understand the details of being a leader or ruler, it means to come and serve.
In that sense, the leader is not quite egalitarian. The leader is under the people. The leader is the servant of the people.
And the people should be above.
Exactly. And this was, the idea of responsibility. If you are the leader, you have the responsibility to make sure this. Now, let's say you're just an average person. If an army appears on the horizon, you can say, all right, I'm out. That's what Sanhat did. He said, there's a coup, I'm out, I'm going to do my own thing. You don't have any responsibility. But for the ruler, he is the servant of the people. He has to make sure his people are not enslaved. So in the case of Marin Patah, he had to go and lead at the war front. In the case of Ramesu, he had to go and lead at the war front. At the case of Juhidi Mes, he had to go and lead at the war front. He may not have wanted to do that. He may have said, I want to go sit back and sip some palm wine somewhere. But as the leader, you don't have that option. You don't have the opportunity. You have responsibilities. So the average person doesn't have those responsibilities. They can do what they want. They can abscond and do whatever, like Sanhat did, but the leader cannot do that. So Sinwo's right. So let's look at the parallel. Sanhat, who was one of the soldiers in the army, he decided there's a palace coup. Amenemhat has been assassinated. He decides, you know what? I think there's going to be problems. I think there's going to be trouble. and because of cowardice or fear or whatever, he decides to abscond and go into southwestern Eurasia just by himself. He goes around the walls of the ruler that are built to keep these Eurasians out, and then he has all these exploits. So that's the whole content of the story, is the exploits he has. Then eventually he begs Senwosret to allow him to return to Kemet. And as the ruler, as someone who does Maat, he says, you know what, you will not have to be buried in ram skin like these Eurasians do. You can come back to Kemet and have a proper burial. Because that was also one of the responsibilities of the ruler. If somebody dies somewhere else, you have to go out and get that person's corpse so that they can be buried in the land of black people. So, you know, you have so many cases of this. So this is what we're getting at. Now, Senwosret, who was the son of Amenemhat I, he did not abscond. He set right for Mennefer. He set right for the place of rulership in order to make sure that, you know, that things are put back into order, put back into balance. You understand? So this is exactly what we're talking about here, that the person who is the ruler has responsibilities to uphold Ma'at. The person who is not the ruler can basically do whatever, you know, they want to do.
But I think in the more deeper sense, it shouldn't be the case. If you're not even a ruler,
you should
practice Ma'at.
Right. And oftentimes that's why people have subsidiary positions, because they will swear an oath that me too, even though I'm not the overall ruler, I will practice Ma'at. You understand? So you would have to say an oath to the community that in day or in night, in sunshine or in rain, that I will come and serve the people. I will never say that I'm not too busy. Even to this day in Ghana, where you have people who take chieftaincy titles, they have to swear an oath. You know, Nanamaka. You have to say what you are going to do and what you're not going to do. Now that holds you responsible. You understand? So even the person who isn't the outright ruler, once we give you this position, we're saying now you have responsibility to the nation. Yeah. You understand? Whereas other people may only recognize their responsibility to their household or whatever. Maybe that shouldn't be the case, but the person who you entrust this position is the one who has sworn and said, Ma'at Heru, true of voice, that this is what I'm going to do, this is what I'm not going to do. Now you can be held accountable based on what your words have said.
I think the concept of swearing and oaths in itself is Ma'at.
So that's the underpinning idea of Ma'at. So even this, to say Ma'at Heru, this is to say true of voice. This means that what I have uttered is the truth, and now you can be held accountable for that. You have at the time where Seth was trying to, this is in the text Horus and Seth, that when Seth was trying to usurp the throne, that Aset swears an oath, and she says, you know, as long as my mother Neith is here, as long as Patah Tenen is here, that, you know, my son will ascend to the throne. So she actually invokes, she's a deity herself, but she invokes other deities to make sure that Ma'at is done. You understand? So this is the idea, and Aset is considered one of the Ma'at sisters. So Aset and Nebet Hut, whose name actually means the Lord of the Temple, or Lord of the female, let's say female lady of the temple or lady of the enclosure. So all of them are royalty themselves, but what they're doing is that they're swearing oaths in order to make sure that Ma'at is done. You understand? So this is the idea, and this is why we have to take source text. And the reason why is that we can see what happens when we build a foundation on lies. So let's look at Plato and the Republic. So in the Republic, Plato says, let's craft a lie. And in the lie, let's say that some people are born to rule because they have more gold in their veins.
Let's go for a musical break, and when
No problem.
we'll go into that.
No problem.
It's taking your production to the next level.
I hope everybody's understanding what we're dealing with.
Yeah. Getting started.
Yes, indeed, we are taking it to the next level, and this is where you come and learn a lot of things that you never knew about Africa right here on the X Level for Good Morning Africa.
Yeah. Okay. Oh. Okay, no Craig is true. Mama tell my tea, I'm saying I make my mama cook true. Tia Busha, why a giant dia, when you're partner near with Chiga and Sakra, Bible say what ya pasia. Tima truck up in a shy, Samadiana say. You're the Mabby, but I feel a mess made in the queue. Came me come in, so men to me now that you do. Take up name and see me bought me Pema Cram and Chemachi or Raya Body, Bonam. Tina came in Nadonam. Now the Tiga see me, so me home me where my papa dam. My Fujima no ye and you go be time in wine. Okay, me wow, say when I time I wine. Say you can't be a wine, can you so the jack? The soup from the one you so
when you go to Kemet, you'll be amazed. Every single square inch of everything is covered with text. Every square inch of everything. This is talking about democracy, education before the time of Democritus, because everybody can go and read on the outside of temples, walls of temples. All of the information is public for everyone to know. So as opposed to billboards, which are just selling something these days, that all of this information about the Holy Trinity, about Immaculate Conception, about this, about that, is everywhere. Every single time a sacrifice was made, it's written. Every time a war is won, it's written. So everybody has access to go in and learn whatever they want to learn everywhere. And this is the thing, before I went there, and I still do, I lament that so much has been stolen by Eurasians and taken to the London Museum and the Louvre and Paris and Moscow and Berlin and Turin and all these places. But when you go there, you will be dumbstruck to the point where, like, I had a camera and I had it on the quickest setting where that I walked around for 3-4 hours. I couldn't even take pictures of everything that's written there. Now think about how much time it took to carve it in. I'm just taking a picture of it. I can't do it. You understand? No, I'm saying that I don't even have time to take pictures. There's so much around. Yeah. There are some places where they try to prevent you from taking pictures, but if you are very smart, then you know how to do.
So what did those things say?
So there are texts all over. So mostly it's in a place called Valley of the Kings inside of the tombs. And the concern is that if you take flash pictures or whatever, eventually it will wear out or die or so forth and so on. So you can actually go into the tomb of Jehuti Mes, and I took pictures of every single thing, because the other thing is that it's like Ghana now, because it's Arabs who are there, and if you just give them some money, they call it bashish. If you give them something small, and right now the tourism is so far down, so you'll be the only one who goes in there for an hour. So the person who's there, they just want some bashish, and then you go in and you take pictures of everything. And if you look at the tomb of Jehuti Mes, it's the same rule. I'm talking about who made that reversal of decision. Jehuti Mes, that's what they call Tutmos.
Just getting started.
Exactly, that's a song from Afrikan, and they call this one Kasa, and we are here to talk. Yeah, Kasa. Now you see idea. This one takes us to 40 minutes past now, and we have 20 more minutes to go. So we are learning about Maat and the way whenever we look down upon it, we get this order. Now let's juxtapose Maat to the modern day just 10 rules. What it has done for us from both sides.
I want us to go to the source of where we are now in terms of Western whatever. Isfet and chaos that we're living in right now, and look at the source of it. So if you look at the writings of Plato, he has this idea. He says, let's come up with a clever lie, and let's say some people are born to rule because they have more gold in their veins, and then other people
have more gold.
Exactly. So whatever. And he acknowledges that what he's coming up with is a lie, but he's saying that with this lie he'll be able to justify that those who have more, he basically says that everyone has some level of mineral content. So those who have gold in their veins, that they should rule. Those who have brass, they should be under them.
How did they measure those things?
It's not measurable because it's not something that's even meant to be true. He's saying, I'm about to come up with a lie to justify that the freeborns should be able to rule. What is the source
of these documents?
It's called the Republic, so you can actually read it in the original Greek, or you can read it in translation.
Okay.
So go and read The Republic by Plato. You can read the laws by Plato. This is what people study all over the world, so you can verify, cross-check, and reference.
Wow.
But he says, I'm starting off with a lie in order to justify minority rule over the many. So this is not based on Maat. It's not even supposed to be based on Maat. He's saying from the beginning, I'm about to lie. You understand? It's not that I'm protecting white people from enslavement or whatever. He said, I'm just about to lie so that I can sit around and have philosophical whatever and sip wine and whatever, and I can rule without working, and say that those people have more iron in their blood, that those are the ones who are made to work. Now, we can see how when you start off with a lie, that everything goes, from there. And this was the problem with the whole side of, in ancient times, it was egalitarian, because that's not true. Just very clear and simple, it's not true. Every myth, archaeological sites where you see, tombs of rulers and so forth and so on, all the way down where you can see gorillas, that they have a hierarchy among them. Where, you have the senior wife gorilla, the second wife gorilla. We can look at meerkats, we can look at lion prides, we can look at any mammal that, you have some level of hierarchy, responsibility, and the role of the male in the lion pride is the exact same as the king in Kemet, which is to protect, the cubs, to protect whatever. So the lionesses are the ones who go out and hunt, and they bring, the food back, because they know his responsibility is to protect them. If he can't protect them, then he can't be king. Same thing with gorilla. His responsibility is to protect them. The same one with the lead meerkat. His responsibility is to protect them from other meerkats that are around. You can actually see documentaries where it goes into this. So every mammal, whether
so this in a
and
way,
that's your role as the man of the house.
Okay. It's justifying why in most part of Africa, in Ghana, and even today in the rural areas, you can see the women going to the farm to bring food. And these days it's being bashed, it's being criticized that women are the ones that are working to feed the family. Like from what you're saying, it looks like even in the animal kingdom, the female's job is to bring food.
That's what lionesses do, and that's very well documented. You understand?
Yeah, whilst the male provide protection.
That's his role, is to protect.
If you had to bring it into modern day Africa, Ghana, and the rural areas where still women go to the farm to bring food, is that because now they are preaching against there are NGOs who are talking about women shouldn't go to the farm and those things.
Yeah, the thing is that any cultural practice, you have to see, is it beneficial to black people or is it not beneficial to black people? You have some places in Africa where only the men do the farming. You have some places in Africa where only the women do the farming. What we have to understand is that these people came up with something logical of how can we ensure that we survive, that our children have food to eat, so forth and so on. In some places, they scientifically thought about their whole situation and said, you know what, the men should do it. In other places, they scientifically and logically thought about it and said, no, that's not the best division of labor. Let's have the women do it. You understand? So, again, we have to look at Maat propriety, that we have to look at different contexts.
So it should be scientific.
Exactly, because that's what our ancestors were doing. Any cultural practice, you should look at it as a scientific longitudinal study. When I say a longitudinal study, usually in modern day science, they mean, we tested it over 5 years, over 10 years. No, when we're looking at African culture, every single African culture is a longitudinal scientific study of what happens when you do this for 100, 200, 300, 1,000 years. You understand? We know that we get this end product, this end result, when we do this practice over the course of 1,000 years. Now, most times they'll send a drug off after it's been tested for 1 year or 2 years, but they don't know what's going to happen in 2 generations to your genetics when you're taking this drug. They haven't seen over the course of multiple generations, but for every African culture, they've seen over the course of multiple generations, this is what happens. But then we ourselves, as modern day Africans, we can look at them comparatively once we know them, but that's part of the problem, which is we don't know them. Once we know them, then we can say, all right, in our context, let's also be like our ancestors and think logically and think what can be beneficial to African people. You understand? If women going to farm and men protecting is beneficial to African people, then we do it that way. If men going to farm, and sometimes it may be that when women go to the farm, then they would be enslaved. So we need the men to go out there. And there's actually a case in Lamentations of Ipu where it says every man goes to the field with his shield. So you have men farming, but they have to go there with a shield just to protect themselves because these Eurasians are coming in and wreaking havoc. The prophecy of Nefertiti says the same thing, that these Eurasians come in and terrorize the hearts of those who are upon the plow. So these Arabs, you talk about terrorists now, that's what we were talking about thousands and thousands and thousands of years ago. They're terrorizing the people. So, this is what we have to look at, and again, it's logical in making different considerations. But I want to actually come back to this idea of Plato, because on the side of the egalitarianism, it seems like it's something good, from the outset. But if it's something good, why do you need to lie about the story of Asar, Set, and Heru? You understand? If what you want is something altruistic, or is it that people who say that they believe in egalitarianism are superior to those who don't say that they do? And then we just have a hierarchy where, look, we're the egalitarians and we're better than all these people who aren't egalitarians. Then you just have another hierarchy again. But it's one that's founded in untruth. So if egalitarianism and those who espouse those ideas even mean to be true, which is the core meaning of Ma'at is truth, right? Then you should say truthfully, was Asar a king and did he oversee the balances of Ma'at? If he did, then that means in ancient times people thought kingship was in alignment with Ma'at, and that the role of the king is to do just that, protect the people. You understand? If egalitarianism is good, then we shouldn't lie about this. We shouldn't lie about the archaeological record and so forth and so on. So just that would be the cause for pause, because we can look at Plato and see what happens when you found something on a lie. Then it ends up having chaotic effects. So for this one, if you want to say egalitarianism is what we need right now, then just be truthful and say, what back in the day they didn't do it. That's not what they thought, whatever. In this day, I disagree with
somebody
them.
just sent me a message says that I should break down what egalitarianism is.
Right, egalitarianism is the idea that everybody is equal regardless of anything. Right, so this finger is equal to this one, even though they're of different lengths. That's the idea, that somehow this one needs to come smaller and these ones, and now everything is equal. Now these ones may be a bit uncomfortable for a while, but everything is equal regardless of whatever. So that's the idea. That there should, and you can see this to some degree where you have like just people who are there. They don't have any, very articulated society. The people of Tasmania have been exterminated from the face of the planet by the Eurasians who went there. You had penal colonies in Australia, so forth and so on. That was the caliber of whites who went there. And what they would do, they would play games where they would bury the black babies. They're blacker than anyone you'll ever see around. They would bury the black babies all the way up to their heads, and then they would use their boots to kick the heads and play a game of it and see who could kick the baby's head the furthest. These are the ones who we say brought us civilization, right? They would rape the women and make them wear the head of their husbands as a necklace as they're doing it. You understand? So all of these are tested in their own historical documents because they would brag about it. At that time they said this means that God is on our side because look, we can do this, we can do that. They were, bragging. So those people we can perhaps intuit or infer that they may have had some level of egalitarian society. We don't know. We see all other mammals that internally have some level of hierarchy, but let's say perhaps they were egalitarianism. They practice egalitarianism, but now we have to put it in a context and say, well, what happened to them? When they came up against people who didn't practice egalitarianism, they were wiped off of the face of the planet to the point where there's not one single full-blooded Tasmanian left on the face of the planet Earth. So now let's look at it rationally, logically, and based on reality. If we want to advocate for egalitarianism now, that everyone should be equal regardless of whatever, no one should have more responsibility than anyone else. You're not more responsible to protect this group than I am. You understand? Then we have to say that that's a modern day view. That's not what our ancestors said about it. They said, no, you are the ruler. You have more responsibility to ensure order. You're the ruler. That means you have more responsibility. It makes sense
because we're giving you all our resources.
In order to do that.
To do us. So
in order to protect us as the main thing. Again, look at the name of Ramisu Usama Rasatepenra. He said, Maat Kemet Wa Chesut, which means the protector of the land of black people. The protector of Kemet, and the one who's able to curb the foreign lands. That's what his whole name means. So that's the reason why we would do anything for you, is because you're there to protect us, like the lion does, like whatever, like every male and whatever. That's the whole idea, that you are the head of your household, only in the sense that you are the one who is there to protect it. Now let's say, all right, well, I'm on equal footing with my 3-year-old daughter. So that means here someone comes in armed robber and I say, look, daughter, you go protect us. You understand? It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense logically. But we're equal. That means I shouldn't have any more responsibility than you did. But again, let's bring it up and let's be honest and truthful about what it was in the past. If we want to advocate this, then we say this is a modern view. You understand? But then even with the modern view, we have to take into account, well, what can you actually run like this? If you have Arabs who are coming in, just like they were at that time, who are trying to overrun the land of black people, can this egalitarian system where the 3-year-old is the exact same equal, that on some level we can see that there's intrinsically, I'm human, you're human, there's that level. But on another level, in terms of responsibility, should the 3-year-old have the same responsibility as the mother?
No.
Should the 3-year-old have the same responsibility as a father? No. You understand? But I think this is what happens when we are, miseducated in these white schools. We don't get a chance to actually understand how African people do things, and we think our system is the same thing as the Queen of England, off with his head, let them eat cake and whatever. That system is unjust, and that's what happens because the idea of this divine kingship came from Africa. But we can see anything that we gave to them, they perverted and twisted it and turned it around. So they took those ideas where the ruler is there to ensure Maat, and then look at how they did it in Spain, Spanish Inquisition. Look at what they did in Italy. Look at what they did in, England and so forth. And so we can give thousands of examples that they took this idea, then they perverted it and twisted it, and now they use it against us.
Doc, we are getting to the end of our time in the studios, but let's look at something that some people have sent that question from last week about the family in your house. They are interested. They want to know how much it costs. They want to know if they can leave their kids there with you and come for them, as you mentioned, during the weekends.
Right.
Most important, they want to know what does it take for them to have their kids in your homeschooling system.
Let me give them the number of my wife.
Okay.
So they can register. They can call her up now and they can register with her. 054 502 8875. I'll give that one again. There are two numbers. 054 502 8875. That's the first number. That's a MTN number. The second number, Vodafone. 020 152 5355. Again, 020 152 5355. And the young lady, we have one young lady who stays with us during the week. She comes from Pram Pram, so she just arrived last night. So she stays throughout the week, then she goes back on weekends. We can work something out. Right now, we're in a very large house. It's a dwelling place. And there's an additional place, boys' quarters, that we haven't yet outfitted. But once we get that in order, then we can bring in more people to stay and do the boarding. But right now, the majority of children, they come, at 9 in the morning. That's when we start the school day. Then they leave at 3. But again, talk to my wife, and then, we'll all sit down. She, myself, Dr. Samari Kamara, that there are several of us who have doctorate degrees. You can't find many schools where you have the teachers who come in and they have doctorate degrees.
I know Samari myself.
Yeah. So, this is, what we're dealing with. Let's say it's a different level of education that you're dealing with, because you have people who not only have doctorates, because you have people who have doctorate degrees who, frankly speaking, are quite anti-African, miseducated, diseducated, and anti-educated, and that's the reason why they got their doctorate, so they can undermine. They got it from these white universities, so they can undermine the cause of black people. But not only that as a title, but some people who actually understand African education and what we need to do as African people.
But the tuition fee, you can't give it out.
Yeah, have them call my wife.
Okay.
And part
but I know it's affordable.
It's affordable. Part of it is the reason is for the reason that it depends that we have some parents who actually teach, at the school, because again, it's a collective of people who were previously homeschooling.
So you accept parents who want to teach.
Exactly. So we have one parent who comes in who deals with agriculture, and that's what he does professionally. So they have a project in the Volta region, they have projects in the U.S., and they actually bring farmers from the U.S. here to Ghana for them to have intercultural exchanges. So this is someone who knows what he's doing. He knows the scientific names of all these things, so forth and so on. So yeah, why wouldn't you be able to come in and teach? We have other, teachers who come in and do other things. So if you come in and you're contributing in that way, what you pay would be less. If you have multiple children, then there's a deal for that as opposed to just one child. So again, she'll tell you what the sliding scale is depending on what your specific situation is.
Okay, so this question is, when people started sending me these messages, this question came to mind. What would be done to distinguish this kind of homeschooling from the regular one? As majority of the kids are not taught by their parent, and I think the original concept of homeschooling is where I teach my kids, teach your kids. And
this is the idea of a homeschooling collective. But go ahead.
Okay. So what is Bitumikas are doing to make sure that the original concept, I think the original concept was, especially from the US, where they realized that the white school system, or the public school, was made to skew the black child. That's why they took their children out of the schools. What are you putting in place to make sure that these things, these qualities and reasons becomes the core reason for having the homeschooling?
Yeah, so one of the things that we encourage, and that's why it's less if you yourself as a parent come in and teach and you share with the collective, and then also the idea is that it's a collective. As Dr. Samuri Kamara says, he says, we don't want stop, drop, and roll. You just stop here, you drop your children off, then you roll off and we don't see you again. Like, you're supposed to have an active role in the education of your children. So that's the idea. There are several things that make it different in the sense of children can see themselves in the curriculum because we actually share truth with them, as opposed to, let's just start off with Socrates. And I give the example of when we start up with Greek as the origin or the source or whatever, it's one, a lie. But then it's two, I give the example of, picture Usain Bolt, who's very fast, right? Picture him running a race against Donald Trump, who's very slow, right? Who do you think would win? Bolt, obviously. But now picture Usain Bolt has run around the whole track 7 times and he's tired, but now you only start your count from here. So now you say, you shoot the gun, you say, Donald Trump, go. Well, Usain is tired, he's coming back around here, and it looks like Donald Trump is in the lead. That's because you chose to start your clock from when Donald Trump started running. You understand? And this is what happens when we start with Greek anything, because this is the end of civilization. Greek starts at the end of civilization. You understand? But it's like, if we just don't count any of those times that Usain ran around, now it looks like, oh, you're behind, you need to catch up with Donald Trump. Oh, why are you so slow, Usain? Oh, come on, what's wrong with you? Get it up. Come on, what's wrong? This is what we're dealing with. So what we do is that we start our count from the very first shot. Exactly. Even before ancient Kemet, because Kemet said that they came from the south. So if you look at the so-called famine stela, they say that they sent Imhotep down to where the source of the Nile is. The Twin Caverns is their name. So it's referring to the blue and white Niles where they come together around Khartoum. So, and Eurasians say it's talking about Elephantine, saying that the people in ancient times thought that was the source of the Nile. No, they had been south of that multiple times. You understand? That was where the temple to Khnum was, and it was seen as Khnum has an impact on whether the floods will come or not. But they knew that the source of the Nile is before that, so they say they sent Imhotep down, all the way down to a place from where the ancestors had come. The place from where the ancestors had come. So they get all of this history going back, like I talked about, going back 195,000 years ago. That's Omo 1 and Omo 2 in the Omo River Valley. Going back even before that to these fossils in terms of 300,000 years ago, modern Homo sapiens.
It's a shout out from Dr. Kanida goes to you.
Oh, shout out back to her.
And trying to finish on the homeschooling that you are doing.
Mhm.
I don't have a child yet, but any day my child lands, he's coming back.
Let's give it 9 months from now, at least.
That's unrealistic. we are talking about my heart here, so we should.
There we go. We should be straightforward.
And anyway, at the school, how do you juxtapose the things that they are? Do you grade them? Do you grade the students? Do you grade them and also have exams to say that you've moved from this? Do you have classes?
Yeah, we have classes. We have exams. They just did an exam on their Chi this past Friday. You know, and the majority of students did very well. Now you have some who are not native speakers. You have some who are. So we have people. It's really Pan-African in terms of the composition. Because we have some people who are native Chi speakers. We have some who are native Ewe speakers. We have some coming from the Caribbean. Some come from UK, Haiti. It's all over, you know, the place. Some out of the US. So all of these children are there and they're learning together and they're having this social exchange.
So you grade them.
Yeah, we grade them. So they altered the
How
test.
different is your grading system from the WAEC and the normal ones?
Well, first, it's not based on miseducation, diseducation, and anti-education. So it's not if you know these white people, then you get 100. If you don't know white people, then you get an F. That's actually based on what is taught. So here they actually taught the truth about who they are and whose they are. And you don't have to make up anything. Just let them know all of the things that that has been deprived from most people who've gone through these systems. And then the test is not to weed people out. That's what the whole GES and that's what the standard miseducation curriculum is there for. You give them tests and measurements in order to weed these people out and then only let these people get through. As opposed to in this system, you're actually trying to see have they retained what they've learned. You understand? So it's much more holistic in that sense.
How do you try to deal with chew and pour? I don't know if you understand chew and pour.
Yeah, I understand chew and pour.
Okay. How do you prevent that at the school?
Yeah, one thing that Dr. Samuri Kamara does, and all of us do it, he teaches our story. He also teaches creative thinking. So chew and pour is just memorize what I told you, whether it's right or not, and then give it back. And I gave an example of this before. I had a student who was there at University of Ghana. He said, I took philosophy, and they said that before white people came, we didn't have anything written. We just had oral and blah, blah, blah. That was the first phase of philosophy. Second phase, they taught us how to write, and now we're in the new phase. And he just memorized these lies, and he's regurgitating them. No one told him about Ptahhotep. No one told him about Imhotep. No one told him about Ge'ez's writing system. No one told him about Bamum writing system. Nobody talked about Mende writing system. Nobody talked about Meroitic writing system. We invented writing so many times, and he didn't learn about any of those. So he just was tasked to memorize it and whatever. Whereas opposed to this one, we're saying learn to verify the information, do research. If you're learning this, go back and try to find out. Oftentimes we're online, and then we're saying you should be able to cross-reference. It's not just, oh, here's one source that says it. Well, what other sources say this? What other sources say this? You know, what do your parents say? Because most of the parents are sensible. You know, what do your parents think about this? You understand? As opposed to the other model, you come from the village, shut up, you don't know anything about education. Just give it to the almighty teacher. I'll tell them Einstein, Shakespeare, Queen Victoria, and then, you know, you just go home.
Okay. On that note, we will thank you.
Can I finish with a quote?
Okay.
I want to give a quote of Nefertiti that gives the best definition of what Maat is, especially in terms of who the ruler is in relation to Maat, because this is what we've been dealing with. And this is coming from the prophecy of Nefertiti, and it talks about chaos of when the Eurasians come in, and it talks about Maat for when the ruler comes and restores Maat. So it says, a strange bird will breed in the Delta Marsh, the Delta being as far north, and the strange bird referring to the Eurasians. Having made its nest beside the people, they allowed them to come in. The people having let it approach by default, then perish those delightful things. The fish ponds full of fish eaters, teeming with fish and fowl. All happiness has vanished. The land is bowed down in distress, owing to those feeders, Eurasians who roam the land. Enemies have appeared in the east. The Amu, Eurasians, traveled by their strength. The last part of that one, Eurasians have descended into Kemet. Right, so that's chaos. All happiness has vanished. The Amu traveled by their strength. They terrorized the hearts of those upon the harvest, farmers. They seized the oxen of plowing. Then a king will come from the south, Amini. This is Amenemhat. This is the ruler who's going to come up and restore order. True of voice, his name. Son of a woman of Taseti, that's as far south as you can get in Kemet. The blackest of the black people are in Taseti, that's still Sudan. Son of a woman of Taseti, child of the interior of Nechem. He will take the white crown. He will wear the red crown. He will join the two mighty ones. Eurasians will fall to his sword. The pale Libyans will fall to his flame. One will make the walls of the ruler, life, prosperity, and health, to bar Eurasians from entering Kemet. They shall beg water as supplicants to allow their cattle to drink. Then order, Maat, will return to its seat, while Isfet, chaos, is driven away. I hope you follow. So that is our definition of Ma'at according to the ancient people. That when the Eurasians come in, they bring Isfet, all happiness vanishes. But when a ruler comes up and is able to assert black power, that's where you have the end of this period of destruction and so forth and so on. Because he will banish them and make
in a nutshell, Ma'at was not just moral code, but also kind of protective instrument for black people.
Exactly. And this is what Mra is supposed to be to this day. So when we talk about Mra, we're talking about law, we're talking about order. It's the same thing as Ma'at. You understand? Even the terminology is quite similar, I think we can say. So this is how our ancient ancestors envisaged it. Okay. And I think that if we want to do anything now, we have to first be truthful and say that's how our ancestors conceived of Ma'at. If right now we want to come up with a different definition, we should still start with truth and say that's how they saw it. We have the right to disagree with them. You understand? And say now we want to be egalitarian. The 3-year-old and the 20-year-old, they're all the same. You have the same responsibilities as me, so go and feed the family, 3-year-old. All right? If we think that that's what's logical or that's what's good or that's what's right or whatever, we still have to say that's how it was and that's what's true. Now I disagree with them. Otherwise, we're starting off with a foundation of lies, and then we basically become like Plato in the Republic. We know that what we're saying is a lie, but we think egalitarianism is the best objective, so we're just committed to it and we're going to do it regardless of whether it fits, regardless of whether it's reality, regardless of whether it's truth, justice, order, righteousness, harmony, balance, reciprocity. And then that in and of itself is going against Ma'at if you're starting with a lie.
Thank you very much. And finally, I don't know if Doc is a fan of giving shout outs to listeners. Other than that, I will ask you anything you want to say about the school, the school, and
Okay, I'll give a shout out to my wife, because if I don't, I'm sure I'll have a hard time. That's Kala Kambon. Shout out to Dr. Samori Kamara. Shout back out to Dr. Carnita Groves. And everybody else who I forgot to mention, because I'll see somebody on campus and say, you ain't shout me out. I'll say, I was sorry. So everybody else, all protocols observed in the Ghana way. All right. Just about the school. We'd like for more people to come and check it out. That's Abibi Fahundia Disuyambia. If you can read Chi, our entire website is in Chi, and it's there, abibifahundia.org. So that's the website for the school. You can check it out there. Also, and the prices have changed. So the prices that are listed, they've changed. So call my wife and she'll give you the updated prices. abibifahundia.com. That is where we teach capoeira, which is how to defend yourself and your family, your nation, and your race. That's what we're all about. So it's not let's just do it because it's cultural and it looks cute. No, you need to learn how to defend yourself. If you think your life matters or Black Lives Matter, you are the one who's responsible for defending yourself, your family, your nation, and your race. And that's what we need to be doing as Black people.
I think next week, by the latter part of the show, we should talk about that. How are people outside of Ghana, especially those in the States, are they aware of this? How are they you taking advantage of this platform?
Right. So, we can definitely discuss that as well. I also want people to come to the university because we have an open door policy. And Elikem came last time. We have the Medu Necha class. So that way you don't have to take my word for it or anyone who talks about egalitarian's word for it. There's a quote by Jacob Carruthers, the late Dr. Jacob Carruthers, where he says, African champions must break the chain that links African ideas to Eurasian ones and listen to the voice of the ancestors without Eurasian interpreters. It says European interpreters, but Europe is a fiction. So we replace it with Eurasian. But basically, we shouldn't have any interpreters, because the person who's black may be sending you off on a dummy mission, and because you don't know how to read it, you don't know the myth, you don't know the stories, you don't know anything, then you just follow along with them. But you may not know that this person has another agenda. So they're saying, I'm going to lie to you because I think my agenda is good. You understand? But if you can read the text for yourself, then whether it's white or black interpreters, you can just say, what did my ancestors say? Then once you know that, then you can decide, I agree with them or I disagree with them. But let's start based on truth. Let's start based on Maat. Otherwise, you're starting on Isfet, and we see all around us what happens when there's Isfet reigning. We see all around us what happens when we don't have a black power who's there to protect black people and prevent them from being enslaved. Again, there are more people enslaved in the prison system in the U.S. than were enslaved in 1865. This is something to think about.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Obadele Kambon, for helping us actually decode the whole thing about Maat. And I know by the messages of the ancestors, we're going to be here next week.
I thought you were going to say something very disruptive.
to discuss another great topic. So we are always grateful and thankful to you coming to.
No problem.
Okay, just gone by was teachings and learnings about Africa and on learning about Africa from Dr. Obadele Kambon from the University of Ghana Institute of African Studies right here. So the show is over right here on X Live Africa. Good morning, Africa. I go by the name Kwabna Bibini Terrier, and they call me DJ Fuad. We'll be here next week with Dr. Kambon, but tomorrow we continue on the show. Good morning, Africa.